know when you zone out of conversations and your wife wonders what the hell's wrong? Trust me, I've been in those shoes uncountable times, and I'm finally going to spill what my 3 brain cells are up to at those points. It cooks up hypothetical theories, like what would happen if Spider-Man had to fight King Kong? Or what if Bran Stark never climbed that damn tower? And then one day, I found myself questioning what would happen if Darkseid and Apocalypse clashed. I mean, come on, I have perfectly sane reasons to wonder about it, right? They're both huge and gray-skinned despots whose ideology is also pretty similar: to burn weakness out of human existence and turn people into their weapons. See where I'm going with this? Someone please tell DC and Marvel about this crossover. Wait, there are a couple more similarities between the Apocalypse's tyrannical god and the ancient mutant warrior. See, they both have huge armies, like Apocalypse's 4 horsemen, the Riders of the Dark, Clan Akaba, the Final Horsemen, and things like that. Darkseid, of course, he has the inner circle of generals and torturers known as Darkseid's Elite. Then there's the Parademons, and also some specialized ranks like Giant Warhounds, Justifiers, and Dog Cavalry. Moreover, technologies and fear of prophecies make them seem like 2 sides of the same coin. And while this matchup works on the surface level, if you delve a little deeper into comics, you'll realize that Darkseid has an upper hand. Hey, no offense to Apocalypse fans, but hear me out, guys. The thing is, we've seen Darkseid sneaking into the pages of Marvel stories, like when Marvel and DC teamed up to give us the Uncanny X-Men and the new Teen Titans in 1982. In issue 1 of that comic, we see Darkseid making a deal with Metron to obtain a Psychon Wave device. Why? Because he wants to collect the essence of Dark Phoenix that's been scattered among the people of Earth who have met her. And with that tool, Darkseid extracted those parts of the essence from Jean Grey while the X-Men were sleeping in their Westchester mansion. His plan was to restore the Phoenix and use her immense power to his will to turn Earth into a new Apocalypse and use it as his stronghold to wage a war against his godly rivals, the New Genesis. The panel, drawn by Walter Simonson, shows the essence leaving Jean's body as she desperately asks Scott for help. On the other hand, Raven of the New Teen Titans, who is an empath, saw a premonition of what was to occur in her dreams, and the comic read, "She sleeps now and dreams. Then suddenly light flares in celestial darkness, blinding, predatory, insatiable." Raven wakes up from the nightmare and her vision encourages the group to track down the person who resembled the Phoenix. But Darkseid was ready. He sent his parademons and employed the mercenary Deathstroke, who defeated Robin during a fight and rubbed it in his face, saying, "You're a real hotshot, Robin. But against me, a man who utilizes 90% of his brain capacity, with the physical abilities to match, you're simply outclassed." However, the beeper on an unconscious Robin's belt buckle begins beeping and alerted the Titans, which led to a personal enmity between them. On the other hand, the X-Men left the mansion to intervene in the next attack as Cerebro was able to pinpoint the villain's next target. However, the Teen Titans arrived at the X-Mansion during their absence, and the Parademons mistook them for X-Men and captured them. Meanwhile, the X-Men battled Deathstroke and another wave of Parademons, but end up losing 2, and both teams end up getting transported to the foot of the Source Wall, and there they meet him. Darkseid exploited the X-Men's memories of Jean Grey to reassemble the Dark Phoenix, and she appeared questioning, "Who summons Dark Phoenix?" To which a reply came I, Darkseid. However, though the X-Men and the New Teen Titans rallied together, there were no match against Darkseid's force, and in the end, love won as Jean's inner voice spoke up while she was about to consume Cyclops. And finally, the furious Firebird lashed out at its creator, Darkseid, and consumed him. She then sent him through space back to the Source Wall. But Apocalypse was not part of this battle, and even in 1996, when Marvel vs. DC featured 11 crossover battles, we did not get Darkseid and Apocalypse. In fact, the Master of Apocalypse even teamed up with Magneto in the Unlimited Access storyline of 1997, but we never saw him against or with Apocalypse. That means when I'm comparing these two, it has to come from capping their feats, and on that ground, Darkseid is clearly winning. Sure, Apocalypse has all the high-tech resources like Ramatut's regenerative technology, and even a celestial ship. But even after all this, Darkseid happens to be someone who can never truly be destroyed, despite being defeated time and again. I've already proven that I am Team Darkseid on this one, and there are different ways the evil god can squander Apocalypse. What if Darkseid uses his Omega effect on Apocalypse? See, Apocalypse's first instinct is survivability. That's exactly why Ramatut's technology is so important to him. It allows him to heal and grow into massive sizes. But the best part, Apocalypse can just come back to life through this technology after an apparent death. Remember how he used the tech to go into a long regenerative slumber like Pennywise, and return even after Cable destroyed him with the scimitar? Yep, he always comes back, and that makes him almost invulnerable against almost all the other X-Men villains. But for Darkseid, that's an advantage. He can easily use the Omega effect against Apocalypse and put him in a regeneration trap. See, according to DC's database, the Omega effect is way more potent than a simple eye blast. Rather, it's basically a dark opposite of the Alpha effect. Both Alpha and Omega effects are essentially born from the source, and while the latter can create and bring hope, the Omega effect stands to destroy. And you know what's an alias of the Omega effect? Life Trap. Yeah, Darkseid, as the wielder of the Omega effect, can use it to trap anyone in an endless loop of death and rebirth. In fact, it was once used by the New Gods of Apocalypse to trap Shiloh Norman's Mr. Miracle into what is known as the Life Trap, who kept on saying, "I have to get out of here," while being stuck in a hospital bed. And that's exactly how Darkseid can turn Apocalypse's idea of return, the never-ending quest of regenerating himself by using a host body or celestial machine, into a lifelong punishment. Another time when we saw Darkseid use the Omega effect to play with time and trap people is when he shot Batman with the Omega Force when the Dark Knight mortally wounded him with a radiation bullet, as he broke his no-kill rule and said, "I'm making once-in-a-lifetime exceptions." And Darkseid calmly projected those red glowing beams from his eyes while saying, "Little man, can you out-trace the Omega Sanction? The death that life is." Oh boy, this line stings. It sends Bruce Wayne's consciousness back through time, which ultimately kicked off the storyline, Batman, The Return of Bruce Wayne. I guess I've made my point. Darkseid can absolutely use the Omega effect to trap Apocalypse, and the latter's healing factor might just make things worse and give Darkseid enough time before he finally decides whether to imprison him or weaponize him. Or maybe even erase him. In fact, even if you compare their full first appearances, Darkseid has always had a better fighting ground. Darkseid's Omega effect would completely bypass Apocalypse's healing factor, and he can use it to do literally anything with it. Anti-Life would beat Apocalypse before the punching even starts. I've never been good with words, but I get what the Anti-Life equation in DC means. In simple terms, it's a fictional mathematical formula which proves that life is inherently meaningless. Okay, DC pulled a Nietzsche. Anyway, the theory goes that learning or hearing the equation removes any sentient being's free will and leaves them in despair, who then becomes completely obedient to the one who utters it. Of course, who other than Darkseid would love to use this formula? His entire philosophy is that free will is a mistake, and what better weapon can he have to control and dominate all minds? In fact, he's even done so in the comics. In Final Crisis Issue 3, Darkseid and his men uploaded a virus and broadcast the anti-life equation through the internet, stripping humanity of its free will, as the panel read, "I, Mokarai of Apocalypse, in Darkseid's name now end the world," and pressed a button. He then managed to reduce humanity to mindless servants, and the events finally led to a multiversal collapse. And if we go by Darkseid's obsession with the anti-life equation, then Apocalypse, someone who considers the idea of survival of the fittest and chooses evolution, becomes one of the most important minds that Darkseid would want to control. See, even though Apocalypse is a very strong willpower, at the end of the day, he's a sentient being with ego, desires, fear, and a constant need to prove himself as the Supreme One. His entire personality is built on trauma, because as a child, Apocalypse was abandoned, and whatever he became through a zeal for survival. If I quote directly from Marvel's profile, it says, "Left abandoned, starved to death as a baby in the harsh, unforgiving desert of ancient Egypt, ruled by Ramatut, a band of nomadic raiders found an infant, gray-skinned and freakish in appearance, abandoned by the settlers of Aqaba." Now, that constant instinct to survive in the face of everything, that's practically fodder for the anti-life equation, and a door for Darkseid to ruin Apocalypse's mind using the equation. And frankly, that's exactly why Darkseid is scarier than Apocalypse. The latter can do a lot of harm, no doubt about it. Apocalypse has turned Angel into Archangel and made him one of his horsemen, turned Wolverine into Death, and can even reshape entire teams by using celestial machines. He even turned Hulk and Wolverine into his horsemen during different time periods, and Hulk's new armored appearance as one of the Horsemen was super cool, not gonna lie. But that's pretty much all he can do. He can select and condition individuals to serve him and carry on his goals, but oh boy, Darkseid can subjugate entire civilizations and worse, can turn them into remote-controlled puppets by taking away their very natural survival instinct. That's how the Anti-Life can work on Apocalypse without much effort, because no matter how much Apocalypse boasts that he's beyond fear, the Anti-Life does not care about that. It would just attack his sense of resistance, and even if I argue that Apocalypse can survive the Anti-Life's corruptive effect, for a while, his horsemen simply wouldn't. They would fall like a house of cards, and half of Darkseid's job would be done then and there. He would turn Apocalypse's army against him by making his minions recognize Darkseid as a superior ruler, and he could psychologically break Apocalypse. And in such a state, sooner or later, the Anti-Life would get to the first one as well. Who truly operates on a cosmic scale? Darkseid or Apocalypse? This one's really interesting. Apocalypse is definitely an extremely powerful mutant, but even then, his biggest cosmic level achievements usually rely on borrowed machinery and, Exhibit A, the Celestial Ship. As seen in X-Force number 37 in 1994, a man with long black hair, blue clothes with a tattered blue cloak, was cutting through a crowd of Mongolian warriors with swords and energy blasts. Yeah, it was Apocalypse, and during this time, which was the 12th century according to Saul, that he found an abandoned ship in the Mongolian highlands, and it just so happened that the deserted spaceship belonged to the Celestials. From that moment onward, he became obsessed about finding the key that could unlock the alien technology of the spaceship, and he managed to find it in Nathan Summers, aka Cable, who was wandering across eras as the Traveler. Nathan and Apocalypse fought, and though the former was almost killed, Ozymandias took him inside the ship to revive him. But he didn't understand anything, and when he met the Traveler after years, the latter ran and made a hole in the ship to enter it because he knew what could happen in all this time, and there he was. Apocalypse's blood, which had become infected with Nathan's techno-organic virus, allowed him to interface with the Celestial ship and claim it, as well as transformed him into an even more powerful being. Apocalypse quite literally stole what wasn't his and even managed to command an alien technology by sheer luck. However, it's the biggest proof that while Apocalypse can use cosmic technology, he's ideally employing an external source of power rather than something that's inherently his. But Darkseid himself is inherently a cosmic god. That places him on the same tier as some of the greatest cosmic entities like Monitors and the Anti-Monitor, New Gods, and even Galactus if we keep on the Marvel DC crossover. Now, that's a huge gap of power, dude. In fact, even Marvel portrays him like that. In their universe, Celestials are cosmic giants with limitless power, capable of destroying entire planets. Sure, Apocalypse's connection to something like that is dangerous, but no, it does not and cannot turn him into a Celestial itself. Even when Apocalypse was at the height of his power after the House of M storyline, and during the 2006 X-Men Blood of Apocalypse comic run, when he clashed with the X-Men and the New Avengers, their efforts could ultimately vanquish him. Yeah, the Celestials came and resurrected him afterwards for their own gain, but the implication is reiterated. The beings who created the celestial power will always remain above him. Now, let's talk about Darkseid. In the Justice League Darkseid War storyline, the League experienced a universe-shattering battle between Darkseid and the Anti-Monitor. I'm sure you remember how goddamn brutal and chaotic it was. Several League members became new gods, like Batman sat on the Mobius chair, while Superman absorbs the energy of Apocalypse. And Anti-Monitor used the anti-life equation to control Black Racer, the embodiment of death for the new gods, and then uses Black Flash together to pierce through Darkseid, thus killing him. But he was resurrected by his daughter, Grail, and Darkseid was then born as a son to the crime syndicate's Superwoman. But wait, it's Darkseid we're talking about. After his rebirth, the baby Darkseid nearly succeeded in finishing off the Justice League, but Grail used an Omega Blast to kill him all over again. So yeah, Darkseid has indeed been defeated and killed time and again, even once by his son Orion. But my point is, Apocalypse is rarely seen fighting such brutal showdowns. The thing is, Apocalypse can siphon energies from other mutants. In issues 96 and 97 of X-Men, the second series in 2002, we see Apocalypse capturing various mutants with his horsemen, and Wolverine was already the Horseman of Death at this point. Sunfire, Cable, Iceman, Mikhail, and Nate Gray too have been captured, and now Apocalypse claimed he got the 12, believing he can usher in the Age of Apocalypse. The remaining X-Men fought Apocalypse and his people in the desert, and he merged with Cyclops, which birthed Cyclopocalypse. Basically, Cyclops sacrificed himself to stop Apocalypse. The X-Men did manage to stop Apocalypse from achieving godhood, and that makes it conditional for him, while for Darkseid, it's his starting point. And just like that, Darkseid goes higher up in the hierarchy. Darkseid would make Apocalypse fight alone. Confused? Yeah, I know it sounds weird to think how Darkseid can make Apocalypse fight alone when he has such a huge army, and he's known for fighting as a system. His horsemen, the celestial chambers, hidden tombs, backup plans, you name it. Apocalypse has it ready because he rarely fights as just one single body. And that's what made him such an old-timer in Marvel's history. He has a plan B for plan B. He loves carefully curating chaos and disasters rather than just throwing punches in the dark. Yet, Darkseid plays this game better. I already told you about his army and the entire culture of creating loyal forces built in obedience. If you pit Apocalypse's army against Darkseid's, it'd look like Jon Snow's forces battling the Boltons in the Battle of the Bastards. And no, I don't see any Knights of the Vale arriving to tilt the balance in Apocalypse's favor. But for Darkseid, all his parademons and sadistic followers obey him blindly. And among his defeats, the one I remember is from Justice League of America number 183 to 185, where Darkseid could be beaten only when his own weaponry and Metron sabotage his recreation machine. Darkseid had planned to transport Apocalypse into Earth 2's universe, which would have completely destroyed that Earth. However, the heroes were unable to stop Darkseid from activating the device manually, and were saved only when Metron intervened and reprogrammed the machine. Apocalypse would hate such a battlefield because it's possible for Darkseid to put him in such a position. His horsemen are powerful, and Apocalypse's army is surely an elite one. But you know what? It's super unstable. The moment they break free of their master's control, they become liabilities. And honestly, there are multiple examples where Apocalypse made horsemen, they broke free from his conditioning, and then he remade them all over again. One such time was when Hulk, as one of Apocalypse's horsemen, turned against him in issue 147 of The Incredible Hulk. We got an engaging panel where he fought Juggernaut and then Absorbing Man. War was literally on a killing spree, and his friend Rick Jones tried to stop him. As he said, "Bruce, you're not a killer." But Bruce was far from there and ended up killing Jones. After that, when he scanned what he had done, he tore away the implants and over time managed to break away from Apocalypse's mind control. In short, Apocalypse cannot guarantee the loyalty of his henchmen. But Darkseid? Dude, he doesn't even deal with henchmen because he commands a complete war machine. Think about it. Granny Goodness creates fanatically loyal soldiers. Parademons can overwhelm entire worlds, and boom tubes let his army appear almost anywhere instantly. So while Darkseid operates with a specialized military system, he can very well take down Apocalypse's brainwashed supporters and force him to fight alone. Will killing Darkseid end the problem? I mean, not quite. Like Apocalypse, whose entire identity is based on always returning, Darkseid too has a return factor that's only stronger and even more threatening. There have been numerous instances where Apocalypse came back after seemingly dying, like after Cable ended his essence, or when Jean removed him from Cyclops, or even after Strife left him withered and dying on the moon. But his regeneration is conditional. It's always tied to something. Maybe a tomb, maybe some machinery, maybe a new host. But Darkseid's defeats generally kickstart an entirely different event. Like when he was defeated during the Final Crisis narrative, his anti-life victory still confused Earth, and in the end, Superman had to confront the cosmic consequences. DC noted that Final Crisis might be one of Darkseid's greatest victories. It suggests that Darkseid's usual wins outlast longer than Apocalypse's, and even if the first one could manage to injure Darkseid in some way, it would only trigger a chain of catastrophic events, because while the former's death sends him back to some backup body or sarcophagus, Darkseid's death creates a void in the story and threatens reality itself. And that shows the differences in the return of these two tyrants. Apocalypse returns because he's an immortal villain, but Darkseid comes back because he thrives in the very metaphysical spaces in the universe which contain despair and oppression. And you know what could be worse? If Darkseid chooses not to kill Apocalypse. Instead, he ends up using the celestial-powered mutant as a weapon and makes him feel like a horseman. Youch. Alright guys, that's all we have for today. I really hope that someday we get a crossover comic between these two and get a definitive answer. But until then, their achievement records, powers, and functioning style places Darkseid on a higher level, and in a standard encounter, he has way too many options to overthrow Apocalypse. Jump in the comments below and let us know your thoughts. And if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons and ring that notification bell so that I can keep on rambling about my wild theories just a little bit more. See you guys in the next one. Have a great day. And as always, stay marvelous.